How can a team that planned every second of a perfect museum heist be taken down by something smaller than a fingernail? Imagine a night cloaked in silence, the Grand Museum standing still under the moonlight, untouched and undisturbed. No alarms shattered the calm. No cameras captured suspicious movements. No locks were forced open. It was as if the thieves had slipped through the cracks of reality itself, leaving behind no sign of their intrusion. The security system, designed to detect even the slightest anomaly, remained oblivious. Every guard was in position, every motion sensor silent, and yet the priceless painting had vanished without a trace. When the morning light spilled into the galleries, the scene was flawless, too flawless. Investigators arrived, their expressions a mix of disbelief and intrigue. How could such a meticulously orchestrated crime have been executed with surgical precision? Months of planning had gone into studying guard rotations, memorizing camera angles, exploiting every security flaw. Every detail rehearsed until the plan was embedded in muscle memory. Yet, the lack of any physical evidence, no fingerprints, no broken locks, no disturbance, made the crime scene almost surreal. It was a perfect heist, one that seemed destined to remain unsolved. But perfection has its limits. It doesn't falter because of grand mistakes or blatant oversights. It collapses under the weight of the smallest detail, the one no one thinks to question. The detectives, combing through the evidence, found themselves at a dead end until something almost invisible caught their eye. It was a faded inventory label, barely discernible on the back of the stolen painting. A label so insignificant that no one had bothered to check it, let alone consider it important. What you're about to discover might surprise you. That microscopic code wasn't just an identifier. It unlocked a hidden trail, a secret passageway into the operation, and most importantly, it revealed the insider, the one person whose involvement tied the entire heist together. The thieves didn't fail because of a flawed plan. They succeeded in stealing the artwork, but they overlooked the one mark that could unravel everything. Stay with me until the end to uncover how this tiny, overlooked detail brought down what seemed like an untouchable crime. What's remarkable is how often the smallest detail, the one easily dismissed or overshadowed by the bigger picture, becomes the thread that unravels the entire tapestry. It's a reminder that no matter how intricate or flawless a plan seems, there's always a human element, one moment of hesitation, one careless move, that changes everything. And in this case, that element was hidden in plain sight, buried within a seemingly insignificant interaction, an offhand comment that didn't raise eyebrows at the time but would later echo with undeniable proof. If the story resonates with you, if you've ever been fascinated by how the tiniest clues can tip the scales, or if you've had your own moments where intuition or attention to detail made all the difference, I'd love to hear about it. Share your thoughts or experiences down in the comments. What part of this unraveling struck you the most? Was it the cleverness of the thieves or the quiet, almost invisible slip that exposed them? Your voice isn't just another message in the void. It's what breathes life into this community, shaping the way we explore stories like this together. And if you're finding value in this journey, hitting that like button isn't just a click. It's a way to say, yes, I want more of this. It helps this channel grow, reaching more curious minds who want to dive deep into mysteries, uncover secrets, and see the world from a new angle. Every subscription is a promise to keep delivering content that challenges how we think, that sparks conversation, and that connects us through shared curiosity. So, if you want to keep unraveling stories like this with me, make sure you're part of this community. Because the story isn't over yet. There's still so much more to uncover, and your presence here makes all the difference in turning these pieces into something truly unforgettable. For months, the group had immersed themselves in the labyrinthine details of the museum, dissecting every element with cold precision. The building's architecture was studied through blueprints acquired from obscure channels, while countless hours were spent observing the patterns of foot traffic, the shift changes of security personnel, and the subtle fluctuations in the museum's lighting system. They noted how shadows lengthened and receded with artificial daylight cycles and how the temperature settings affected the sensitivity of the motion sensors. Nothing escaped their scrutiny, not even the peculiar blind spots in the network of surveillance cameras, where the lens's angles created fleeting pockets of invisibility. In a hidden warehouse on the outskirts of the city, the crew constructed an exact replica of select museum wings. Walls were painted to mimic the muted tones of the galleries, and replicas of display cases were painstakingly crafted, down to the thickness of the glass. The floor's texture, the hum of the air conditioning units, even the faint echoes that would bounce off the high ceilings, all were simulated. This was their rehearsal space, where every step was timed and every movement rehearsed until muscle memory took over. The leader, a man known only by his codename, coordinated these sessions with meticulous attention, refusing to allow any deviation from the plan. Each member had a role honed through years of experience in their respective fields. The strategist was a former intelligence analyst, whose understanding of human behavior and operational logistics ensured that the plan anticipated every conceivable obstacle. The hacker, a shadowy figure with unparalleled coding skills, had developed software capable of infiltrating the museum's digital defenses and temporarily disabling alarms without leaving a trace. His fingers danced across keyboards as if an extension of his mind, mapping the complex web of firewalls and encryption that protected the museum's sensitive systems. The security specialist, once employed by private firms to test vulnerabilities in high-profile buildings, brought a pragmatic eye to the operation. He had identified the exact models of cameras and sensors in use, knew their weaknesses, and devised ways to bypass or neutralize them. His toolkit included devices designed to jam signals and interfere with infrared beams, all compact enough to be carried unnoticed. Meanwhile, the driver was a master of urban navigation, familiar with every alley and side street that could offer a quick escape. His knowledge extended beyond the city's geography to the rhythms of traffic lights and patrol routes, ensuring that the getaway would be as seamless as the infiltration. Together, they had dissected the museum's defenses down to their core. Redundant alarm systems had been mapped and accounted for, backup generators and emergency lighting were factored into their timing, and the behavior of night shift personnel was predicted with uncanny accuracy. The plan included contingencies for unexpected variables, such as a sudden patrol change or a system reboot triggered by a power surge, each countermeasure designed to maintain the illusion of an undisturbed environment. This was not mere luck or improvisation. Every element of their approach was rooted in data and rehearsed to near perfection. The museum, with all its historical grandeur and technological safeguards, had been rendered vulnerable by the very thoroughness of their investigation. What appeared to be an impregnable fortress was, in reality, a puzzle whose pieces they had meticulously arranged to fall into place. The magnitude of the task was immense, yet the team's preparation transformed it into a calculated series of actions, each linked seamlessly to the next. As the night of the operation approached, the tension within the group was palpable but controlled. They moved through their final checks with quiet determination, aware that the margin for error was non-existent. Their synchronized efforts had transformed a seemingly impossible heist into a scenario where success was not just a possibility, but an expectation. The city outside continued its restless pulse, unaware that beneath its surface, a carefully orchestrated sequence was about to unfold, one that would challenge the very notion of security and control within the walls of the museum. The night air carried a brittle stillness, broken only by the faint hum of distant traffic and the occasional shuffle of a stray cat slipping between shadows. Inside the museum, the group moved like ghosts, each step measured, rehearsed, and silent. The hacker, stationed in an inconspicuous van a few blocks away, fingers danced over a keyboard with surgical precision. Lines of code streamed across his screen as he dismantled the complex web of digital defenses that guarded the museum's security system. Alarms blinked out one by one, cameras looped old footage, and motion sensors blinked into a false state of inactivity. Every electronic barrier was neutralized without a single alert transmitted beyond their control. Back inside, the specialist waited for the exact moment to strike. At 0 hour, he plunged his tools into the main power conduit. The building's lights flickered and died, plunging the galleries into darkness for a heartbeat measured in milliseconds. The tactical team moved forward, communicating only through a series of precise hand signals, each gesture honed through countless rehearsals to avoid error or hesitation. Their eyes adjusted immediately to the blackness, relying on night vision goggles that painted the surroundings in eerie greens and grays. They reached the gallery's heart, the room housing the prized painting. The frame, a heavy ornate construction, was secured behind multiple layers of bulletproof glass and pressure-sensitive alarms. The team's expert carefully disengaged the protective casing, delicately bypassing the sensors embedded within the glass. His touch was steady, almost reverent, as if he was dismantling a fragile puzzle rather than committing a crime. The painting was removed with precision, avoiding any bending or damage that could hint at tampering. Next came the reconstruction. The team replaced the glass, reinstalled the frame, and reattached it to the wall, all in exact alignment. They restored the gallery to a state indistinguishable from its prior condition. No displaced dust, no fingerprints, no disturbances in the air. The room's atmosphere remained untouched, as if the precious artwork had never left its place. The entire operation, from the initial blackout to the final restoration, spanned no more than 7 minutes. Outside, the city's pulse carried on, unaware and unaltered. There was no sign of forced entry, no indication of breach, no trail left behind to unravel. The meticulous orchestration ensured that the museum's security systems would report no anomalies, and the guards' patrols would reveal nothing amiss. Yet, it was precisely this absence of physical evidence that would seed a deeper, more unsettling complication. The investigators who would descend on the scene later would find themselves staring into a void. No prints, no displaced objects, no clues. It was a clean slate, but one that implied a level of sophistication beyond ordinary criminal enterprise. The lack of forensic breadcrumbs meant the entire case would hinge on less tangible elements. The patterns of behavior, the subtle shifts in digital footprints, the psychological profiles of those capable of such flawless execution. The silence of the scene was deceptive. While the walls bore no scars, the security fabric had been torn in a way that would reverberate far beyond the immediate loss. The absence of any disturbance posed a paradox that gnawed at the edges of the investigation. How does one pursue a ghost when it leaves no trace? When every sensor is fooled, every camera fooled, and each guard unwittingly complicit in the illusion. Inside the van, the hacker's screen suddenly flickered with a new signal, a faint anomaly, barely perceptible amid the data torrent. His brow furrowed. Something was off. Despite the perfect blackout, a minuscule data packet had slipped through the cracks of their own firewall. It was insignificant in size, almost undetectable, but enough to hint at a vulnerability they hadn't accounted for. For a team that prided itself on precision, this small error could unravel everything. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the museum's exterior, a figure watched from a distance, obscured by the fog that rolled in from the river. Their presence was unnoticed, yet their gaze was sharp, calculating every movement, every gesture. They were neither guard nor criminal, but something in between, a silent observer waiting for the right moment to act on the knowledge gleaned from the flawless execution. The night had not yet ended. The heist was only the beginning of a deeper game, one woven through the city's veins of surveillance and secrecy, where every shadow held a secret and every silence screamed with hidden meaning. The investigators stood amid the pristine halls of the museum, their expressions taut with disbelief. Each step echoed through the polished floors, a stark contrast to the silence that enveloped the space. The usual chaos that accompanies a break-in was absent. No shattered glass, no disturbed displays, no trace of forced entry. It was as if the thief had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but an impossible scene. They sifted through the evidence, or rather, the lack of it. The sophisticated alarm system had remained silent. No alerts triggered throughout the entire night. The digital logs showed no unauthorized access, no tampering with the security protocols. Thermal sensors, designed to detect even the faintest heat signatures, reported no anomalies. Every camera feed was intact, uninterrupted, the lenses unclouded by any sign of intrusion. It was a blank slate, a perfect crime scene devoid of the usual clues that would guide an investigation. Their frustration mounted with each passing minute. Detective Morgan scanned the room again, hands in pockets, brow furrowed. Agent Ramirez checked the control room monitors, rewinding footage frame by frame, desperate for a glitch, a flicker, any hint of movement. The absence of a pattern was its own contradiction. How could someone navigate the museum without triggering a single sensor or leaving behind any forensic evidence? No footprints, no fingerprints, no tools dropped in haste. The place was untouched, as though the artwork had simply been erased from its frames. The silence was almost mocking, a quiet that seemed to thicken the air, pressing against their thoughts. Detective Morgan exhaled slowly, eyes scanning the room's edges, the corners where shadows gathered but revealed nothing. Agent Ramirez's gaze lingered on the main exhibit's pedestal, empty now, but immaculate. The absence of disturbance here was more unsettling than any sign of struggle. It suggested an execution so precise it defied conventional logic. Minutes passed, the team's energy shifting from disbelief to a tense patience. They knew this wasn't a case of brute force or hurried theft. This was something else. A calculated removal, a vanishing act that teased the limits of their understanding. The city's underbelly was no stranger to cunning criminals, but this was different. The suspect or suspects had orchestrated an event that seemed to exist outside the realm of physical reality, leaving behind a void instead of evidence. Then, as the team prepared to widen their search, a faint movement caught Agent Ramirez's eye. Near the baseboard of a nearby wall, almost blending into the shadowed floor, lay a fragment so small it might have been overlooked entirely. It was a thin sliver of reflective material, no larger than a fingernail, shimmering faintly under the museum's artificial light. Ramirez knelt carefully, retrieving it with gloved hands, inspecting the shard under a flashlight. The fragment's surface was smooth, but not like glass. It bore a subtle, almost imperceptible pattern, etched lines that suggested it was part of something larger, a component rather than debris. Ramirez's heartbeat quickened. This tiny piece was the first tangible connection to the invisible thread of the crime. The shard hinted at technology unfamiliar, perhaps experimental, something outside the standard toolkit of thieves and vandals. Detective Morgan joined, peering over Ramirez's shoulder. The mood shifted, a cautious spark igniting amidst the fog of confusion. This minute clue defied the earlier emptiness, suggesting the presence of something deliberately concealed, something that had slipped beneath the sensors and cameras not by chance but design. The room seemed to hold its breath as they exchanged glances. This was no ordinary theft. The shard was a whisper of a larger puzzle, a fragment of a calculated enigma woven into the fabric of the city's night. Somewhere beyond the walls of the museum, in the labyrinth of alleys and abandoned buildings, the true nature of the crime was beginning to reveal itself. Yet the answers remained elusive, tangled in layers of misdirection and silence. As the investigators pocketed the shard, their thoughts shifted toward the unseen forces at play. The city's pulse quickened outside, alive with secrets waiting to be uncovered. The night's events had peeled back a corner of the urban veil, exposing a mystery that would demand every ounce of their skill and resolve. But for now, the museum stood silent, its perfect crime scene holding tight to its riddles, the faintest trace of disruption nestled in the smallest fragment, the one detail that might unravel everything. The investigators' fingers hesitated as they brushed over the back of the recovered painting's frame, the wood cold and unyielding beneath the skin. Amid the worn varnish and faint smudges, a small beige sticker clung stubbornly, almost imperceptible against the aged surface. At first glance, it looked like one of those inconspicuous relics from an old inventory system, something dusty, obsolete, and utterly unremarkable. Yet, something about its presence felt off, a whisper of discord in the otherwise meticulous recovery. Curiosity took hold, and the investigator peeled the sticker gently, revealing a faded code printed in block letters. It wasn't just a number. It was a cipher with implications far beyond a mere cataloging error. Pulling out a tablet, the investigator connected to the museum's digital archive, fingers flying over the screen as the code was entered. The system blinked and whirred, but no record matched the inscription. It was as if the code belonged to a ghost file, erased from the present, yet stubbornly preserved in this fragment of paper. Digging deeper, the digital logs were cross-referenced with historical archives of the museum's internal records. The code belonged to a classification system decommissioned years ago, a method that had been replaced and buried beneath newer, more secure cataloging protocols. Even more peculiar was the fact that only one person had ever been authorized to use this archaic system. A single employee whose name had long vanished from the current staff roster, their tenure ending under circumstances that were anything but clear. The painting, it seemed, was not just a random prize for the thieves. Whoever had orchestrated the heist had accessed knowledge that was meant to be lost. Codes erased, files hidden, histories rewritten. This was no ordinary theft. It was a misappropriation of something deeply embedded in institutional shadows, a theft that had slipped through the cracks of official records. The implications dug in like an underground current. If the painting bore a code tied to an obsolete system used by one person, then the entire operation was likely planned with insider knowledge. The thieves hadn't failed. They had taken something they were never supposed to find, something that wasn't meant to be exposed. This revelation crafted a new dimension of suspicion. Was the true crime the theft itself, or the unearthing of a secret someone had gone to great lengths to conceal? The investigator's mind raced through the possibilities, drawing lines between the old employee's disappearance, the secretive classification system, and the shadowy gallery where the painting had been recovered. The gallery was a known haunt for illicit art dealings, but what if it was also a front for something more complex? The beige sticker was a breadcrumb, leading into a maze where trust was scarce and every corner held a potential trap. Outside, the city's hum seemed to pulse in tandem with the building's hidden heartbeat. The night's chill pressed in through cracked windows, carrying the distant echo of footsteps and the faint hum of distant traffic. Inside, the silent painting hung, its surface smooth and serene, belying the storm of secrets it now carried on its back. The investigator tucked the tablet away, eyes narrowing as the pieces began to take shape. The case was no longer about recovering stolen art. It was about unraveling a carefully constructed narrative that someone had tried to erase. Whoever had placed that sticker had done so deliberately, embedding a message only visible to those who knew where to look. The next steps would demand precision and patience, a descent into layers of forgotten bureaucracy, concealed motives, and perhaps a glimpse into the psychological labyrinth that had driven an entire scheme underground. The shadows around the painting seemed to deepen, as if inviting the investigator to step closer and peer into the darkness where truth and deception intertwined. The code on the worn adhesive, initially overlooked as a trivial remnant, began to unravel a complex web of past activities and hidden movements within the museum's walls. What appeared at first glance to be an inconspicuous sequence of letters and numbers was, in fact, a key to long-buried records that few had dared to revisit. The investigator's fingers traced the faint imprint, then moved swiftly to the archive room, where dusty ledgers and digital logs held the museum's operational history. As files were opened and screens lit with data, a pattern emerged, one that linked a particular shipment of artworks to a series of internal transfers marked by vague annotations and unexplained delays. These records were not just transactional. They bore the fingerprints of someone intimately familiar with the museum's inner workings. The movement logs indicated that during the period when the stolen piece vanished, access to the gallery was granted through non-standard channels, bypassing security protocols. Cross-referencing employee schedules with the timelines of these irregular transfers revealed a narrow window where only a select few had clearance, and among them was a name that surfaced repeatedly, not only on access logs but also in maintenance rosters and confidential memos annotated with cryptic remarks. This individual, a mid-level curator whose responsibilities extended beyond the public eye, had the rare privilege of navigating secret passageways within the museum, routes known only to a handful of trusted staff. Further investigation into these corridors, physically mapped out through blueprints and corroborated by eyewitness accounts, exposed a network designed for discrete movement, an architectural labyrinth intended to protect the collection from external threats but now seemingly exploited from within. Surveillance footage, pieced together from fragmented camera data, showed fleeting shadows slipping through these hidden hallways during odd hours, moments previously dismissed as routine checks or janitorial rounds. The presence of the adhesive on the stolen artwork's crate was no accident. It was a breadcrumb left either deliberately or carelessly, but its existence spoke volumes about the complicity woven into the operation. As the layers peeled back, the psychological profile of the implicated staff member began to crystallize. Far from the stereotypical criminal mastermind, this person exhibited traits of quiet calculation, a figure who balanced professional respectability with deep-seated grievances. Colleagues described them as meticulous and reserved, someone who rarely drew attention yet possessed an uncanny ability to manipulate the museum's bureaucratic machinery. Internal communications hinted at recent conflicts, budget cuts, disputes over exhibit placements, and a growing sense of disenfranchisement that might have seeded the motivation to collaborate with outside elements. The adhesive code, once reduced to a mere label, now connected disparate threads. The timing of the theft, the exploitation of concealed routes, and the internal dynamics that made such a breach possible. It was a nexus point where the museum's history, its physical structure, and the human element converged into a single explosive revelation. This discovery did not just rewrite the narrative of the crime. It cast a long shadow over the institution itself, raising questions about trust, oversight, and the fragile line between guardian and accomplice. In that moment, the seemingly insignificant detail transformed into a fulcrum of investigation, a tangible link bridging the past missteps and present consequences. The adhesive was more than a sticker. It was a silent witness to a conspiracy that transcended the immediate act of theft, reaching into the hidden psychology of those sworn to protect the cultural legacy. The tension in the air thickened as the implications settled in, promising that the next steps would delve even deeper into the undercurrents of deception flowing beneath the museum's polished surface. The interrogation room was dimly lit, the sterile hum of the ventilation system filling the silence as the employee, once confident, now visibly shaken, fumbled through his explanations. His voice wavered, betraying the composure he had earlier tried so hard to maintain. Every time he was pressed for details, his story shifted subtly, as if he were recalibrating on the fly, desperate to keep his narrative intact. The detectives exchanged looks. Contradictions were piling up like bricks in a wall that was beginning to crack. They began cross-referencing his statements with the museum security logs, access card swipes, and surveillance footage. The evidence quickly painted a picture that the employee had not been where he claimed to be during critical moments of the heist. In fact, timestamps showed that he had entered restricted sections of the museum without authorization, lingering in areas that should have been off-limits even to staff. His fingerprints on a door sensor, recorded twice in less than an hour, contradicted his claim of being on a break. The pattern wasn't accidental. It suggested premeditation, familiarity with the building's blind spots, and a willingness to exploit his position. As the interrogation pressed on, the employee's nervousness escalated. His eyes darted toward the corner of the room where a small, innocuous object rested on the table, a faded label carefully preserved. It was a relic from years ago, something he had believed discarded or destroyed long before. The label, now under scrutiny, bore a series of cryptic marks that linked directly to him, a silent signature that tied him irrevocably to the stolen painting. The detectives leaned in, their voices low but firm, confronting him with the undeniable proof that his past had resurfaced in the most damaging way. The realization hit the group like a seismic jolt. The label wasn't just a piece of paper. It was the thread that unraveled the entire scheme. They had stolen the wrong painting, the one that remained marked with that old identifier, an oversight that exposed their entire operation to the authorities. The other works in the collection had been meticulously stripped of such traces, but this single error was the fatal flaw in what they had believed to be a foolproof plan. Behind closed doors, the compound of their alliance began to crumble. The employee's hesitation and inconsistencies sowed seeds of doubt among his accomplices. Messages left unreplied, meetings missed, plans abandoned abruptly. It all traced back to the growing paranoia fueled by the label's discovery. The once cohesive group fractured as trust dissolved, replaced by suspicion and fear of betrayal. Each member faced the unspoken question: who else knew about the label? Who had left it there? And why had it survived so long? Meanwhile, investigators expanded their scope, piecing together timelines and movements with forensic precision. They mapped the employees' unauthorized entries alongside the museum's staff schedules and visitor logs, revealing patterns that suggested inside knowledge rather than chance. Small details emerged. A door left ajar at odd hours, security cameras momentarily disabled, a forgotten set of footprints in a hidden corridor. These clues wove a tapestry of intent and familiarity, indicating that the heist was less a random act and more a carefully orchestrated betrayal from within. The label, in essence, was the silent witness to a deeper psychological game at play. It was a remnant of past errors and hidden affiliations, a tangible mark that connected the employee's present actions to a shadowed history. The weight of this revelation shifted the investigation from a simple theft to a complex web of motivations, loyalties, and concealed identities. The employee's attempts at concealment only tightened the noose, as every evasive answer further implicated him and revealed cracks in the group's story. As the night deepened, the unease within the precinct grew. The detectives knew they were on the cusp of uncovering more than just a stolen painting. They were unraveling a network of deceit that stretched beyond the museum's walls, touching on psychological manipulation and urban undercurrents rarely visible to the public eye. The employee's downfall was not just a procedural victory. It was a gateway into the darker layers of the case, where the intersection of trust and treachery blurred lines and complicated every assumption. With the label secured and the employee's credibility shattered, the investigation took on a new urgency. The group's once unshakable confidence now appeared fragile, vulnerable to the pressure building from within and without. Questions loomed larger. How many others were complicit? What had been the true motive behind choosing that particular painting? And most unsettling of all, what secrets lay hidden beneath the surface of the museum's polished facade? Waiting to emerge as the case unfolded further, the investigation's momentum accelerated as the seemingly disconnected fragments began to align with unsettling clarity. The key had been an overlooked detail, a label on the back of a painting, barely legible and dismissed by many as mere cataloging. Yet, that small piece of paper bore a cryptic code that, once decoded, pointed directly to an employee whose role at the museum had been underestimated. This individual's routine movements and access privileges suddenly cast a long shadow over the entire operation. Tracing the employee's communications uncovered a network far more intricate than anticipated. Emails, encrypted messages, and scheduled calls hinted at coordination beyond mere internal collusion. The messages were terse, laced with coded language that required patience and pattern recognition to unravel. Each communication revealed another layer of the conspiracy, linking the employee to a group operating in the periphery of the city's underground. These were not amateurs. They were calculated and deliberate, operating with precision under the radar. The connections led to a cluster of individuals, comparatively quiet, blending into the urban sprawl but connected by shared purpose and secrecy. Surveillance footage pieced together their movements, and cross-referencing their known associates revealed a hideout tucked away in an unassuming warehouse on the outskirts of the industrial district. The location was unremarkable, its nondescript exterior belying the complexity of what transpired inside. Inside, crates and blueprints suggested a larger plan, one extending far beyond a single heist. More startling was how the entire operation hinged on a series of oversights. The criminal design was meticulous. A flawless execution plan, precise timing, and contingency measures that should have rendered it impervious. Yet, the downfall came from something as mundane as the backside of a picture frame. No one had thought to inspect it thoroughly. That small, invisible detail, a scribbled annotation hidden from plain view, became the unraveling thread. It linked the artwork to the employee and spiraled outward, exposing the entire network. The revelation that the perfect crime unraveled due to a trivial oversight underscored a fundamental truth about human error and the fragility of even the most sophisticated schemes. The investigation's trajectory shifted from broad speculation to focused pursuit, with each revelation peeling back layers of deception. The museum, once a symbol of cultural prestige and security, now appeared as a stage for shadows, where trust was fragile and appearances deceived. As the authorities prepared to move on the hideout, the psychological weight of the case settled in. The criminals' calculated detachment contrasted sharply with the human elements of oversight and vulnerability that had undone them. It was a reminder that in the labyrinth of urban intrigue, the most innocuous details could carry the greatest consequences. The city's pulse quickened as law enforcement closed in, aware that the operation they were dismantling was but a fragment of a larger, more complex web. The unfolding narrative exposed more than just a criminal enterprise. It revealed the intricate dance between control and chaos, between what is seen and what remains hidden in the cracks of a meticulously constructed facade. Each step forward in the inquiry peeled away layers of disguise, exposing the raw mechanics of deception, trust, and betrayal. The story was far from over, and the shadows it cast stretched into corners yet unexplored, promising revelations that would challenge assumptions and deepen the mystery. The hum of fluorescent lights flickered intermittently as the team sifted through the remnants of what was meant to be a flawless operation. Months of calculated preparation, every detail scrutinized with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, now felt like a cruel joke. Advanced surveillance systems, encrypted communications, biometric locks, all had been rendered irrelevant by a small, overlooked piece of evidence that no one had anticipated: the innocuous inventory sticker. It was almost absurd. The sticker, a faded square of adhesive bearing a barcode and a sequence of numbers, had been placed haphazardly on a crate during the final stages of the operation's logistical phase. No one had questioned it. No one had thought to verify its origin or purpose. Yet, that single slip-up unraveled what had been built with such painstaking care. The sticker's trace led investigators down a rabbit hole of supply chains, delivery manifests, and internal memos, each thread exposing inconsistencies and anomalies that had previously gone unnoticed. The irony was stark. Months of training, rehearsals in simulated environments, and the integration of cutting-edge technology had culminated in an execution that was both methodical and precise. The team had been confident, almost to the point of hubris, believing that their meticulous planning had accounted for every variable. Instead, the overlooked sticker became the fulcrum on which the entire endeavor teetered and ultimately collapsed. It was a reminder that in the tangled web of urban operations, where every move is shadowed by uncertainty, the smallest discrepancy can have outsized consequences. As the investigators delved deeper, the narrative began to shift. The sticker was more than a mere oversight. It was a gateway to understanding the complex interplay of trust and deception within the operation itself. Internal communications revealed subtle tensions and fractures among key players, whispers of mistrust, unspoken grievances, and conflicting agendas. The psychological landscape was as volatile as the physical one, with paranoia seeping into decision-making processes and eroding cohesion. This human element added layers of complexity to the investigation. The urban environment, with its labyrinthine alleys and anonymous faces, mirrored the fractured psyche of those involved. The city's tension seemed to pulse through the investigation, a constant reminder that beneath the facade of order lay chaos waiting to erupt. The investigators found themselves navigating not only the physical evidence but also the intangible currents of suspicion and betrayal that permeated every interaction. Each revelation was a step deeper into an intricate maze. The sticker was a clue, but it was also a symbol of the unpredictable variables inherent in any operation. It underscored how even the most advanced technology and rigorous protocols could be undone by human error, or perhaps, as some began to suspect, by deliberate sabotage. The question lingered: was the sticker truly an innocent mistake, or was it a calculated insertion designed to expose vulnerabilities and redirect the investigation? The implications were unsettling. If the latter were true, then the layers of deception extended beyond what anyone had imagined. The investigation was no longer just about uncovering a botched operation. It was about disentangling a web of manipulation that reached into the highest echelons of the organization. Trust, once considered a given among the team, was now a scarce commodity. Every document, every testimony, was scrutinized through a lens of skepticism, revealing fractures that threatened to destabilize the entire framework. Meanwhile, the urban landscape around them continued to pulse with life, streets bustling with indifferent crowds, neon lights casting long shadows, and the ever-present hum of unseen surveillance. The city was a living entity, its rhythms both a backdrop and a participant in the unfolding drama. The psychological pressure mounted as investigators grappled with the dual challenges of piecing together tangible evidence and interpreting the elusive motives behind it. In this environment, the smallest detail, the forgotten sticker, became a linchpin, a narrative fulcrum upon which the entire story hinged. It was a reminder that in the complex dance between order and chaos, technology and human nature, one tiny misstep could cascade into a downfall of monumental proportions. The investigation pressed on, guided by the knowledge that the surface had only been scratched, and that beneath lay secrets waiting to be uncovered, each more confounding than the last. The journey was far from over, and the shadows lengthened with each passing hour, hinting at truths that would challenge everything the team thought they knew. If you made it all the way here, I appreciate you sticking around through every twist and turn. It means a lot to have you along for this ride, diving into these mysteries with me. If you found the insights helpful or felt the story pulling you deeper, consider hitting that subscribe button. It's the easiest way to stay connected and keep uncovering these layers together. Also, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below with the phrase, "I'm with you till the end," if this episode resonated or if you're just as curious about what's lurking beneath the surface as I am. It's a small way to let me know you're really here, and it helps build this little community where we can share thoughts and theories as the story unfolds. And if you feel like it, a thumbs up would be a nice nod to the connection we've built. It's kind of like a quiet high five for making it through all the details and revelations. No pressure, just a simple gesture that keeps the momentum going. Before you go, there's a video right next to this one that dives even deeper into some of the clues we've touched on here. It's a smooth continuation that might shed more light on those shadows we've been chasing. So go ahead, click over and keep the thread going. I'll be waiting for you there.